Greetings, fellow humans. My name is Alistair Lord and I am the Renaissance Yorkshireman. Today I'd like to talk to you about the healing journey. What do we need? So first, what is a healing journey? Well, in a nutshell, it's about turning wounds into scars. So if we think about the physical body, sometimes we get injured. We've all picked up injuries in our time. And at the time of the injury, we have a wound and there is blood gushing from the wound. Now, in some cases, this may threaten your life, but actually in most cases, it doesn't. And later on, there's a scar. So when the wound heals, it leaves a scar, and the scar can often remind us of something that we did. So this is true of the physical body, but it's also true of our mental health. So in essence, what the healing journey is to turn those wounds that we've got in childhood and later on in life, and to turn those wounds into scars so that we can see that, know that something happened in our life, learn a lesson from it and move on. What do we need to start the healing journey? Well, I would say there are three things. So the first one is self-knowledge, the second one is intent, the third one is action. So self-knowledge and intent with no action are worthless. And action without self-knowledge and intent is also almost certainly going to be worthless. In some rare cases, you may stumble upon a healing modality by yourself, but this is very unlikely. So what is self-knowledge? Well, first of all, it's acknowledging that there is some kind of issue. You have something going on in your life which is causing you problems. The question can then be expanded out. What is the issue? In some cases, these issues will be very obvious. You have an anger management issue or you're a people pleaser. But the deeper reasons will be somewhere in your subconscious, and you'll have to go looking for them using some kind of modality. And I'll make a video in the future about some of those modalities. The second thing that we need is intent, and this is made up of two parts. The first part is will and desire. So you have a desire to make changes in your life. From the self-knowledge, you've identified some kind of problematic behavior that keeps repeating. You desire to change it, and then you go looking for some kind of plan, strategy, or technique to use. So this might be a healing modality such as counseling, or it could be some kind of meditation. It doesn't really matter what the technique is, but you need some kind of technique. And finally, you need to take action. So when you have your technique, you start implementing it, you review how it's working, you adjust it, and then you implement it again. And you'll go round in a cycle of implementation, review, adjust, implementation, review, adjust. In some cases, you'll just be making small adjustments, but in other cases, you might throw out the modality you're using because it's not really working and implement something else. So those could be minor adjustments or they could be major adjustments, or it might be that you're making minor adjustments, but then you add something else to the mix. In the healing journey, there are two paths of healing. There's the masculine path of healing and there's the feminine path of healing. And all of us need both, but most of us will tend to need more of one or the other. The masculine path of healing is about understanding, and the feminine path of healing is about unconditional love. Now, which one you're likely to need more of doesn't depend on whether you're a man or a woman. It depends on what kind of wounds you got in childhood. Did you get primarily masculine wounds or did you get primarily feminine wounds? Now, I'll give you an example of myself. So I got primarily masculine wounds in my childhood from my father. My father was diagnosed with cancer when I was 2 months old, and he died of cancer when I was 14. And he had an anger management issue, so my home life, at times it was quite good, at times it was not so good, but I primarily got my wounds from my father, so I need more of the masculine path of healing. Now, I suspect that most of you watching this video, if this is the first time you've heard of this idea, it will be obvious to you which type of wounds you got more of in your childhood. If it's not obvious, it might be that it's close to 50-50. Now, in my own case, I would say, I need somewhere between 60 to 70% of the masculine path of healing, 30 to 40% of the feminine path of healing. But, I don't know exactly what the percentages are, but I need more of the masculine path of healing than the feminine path. But like everyone, I need both. Let's look at a little overview of the masculine path of healing. So the first thing to note is you are never, ever, ever going to get 100% of all of the pertinent information. Now, there's all sorts of reasons for this. One is because memory is faulty. So things that happened as a child, you remember them in a different way. So until children are about 5 years old, they don't have a linear memory. All of their memory up until around about the age of 5 is a kind of emotional memory. From the age of about 5 years old, children start to develop a linear memory, so they can remember the order in which things happened. But before the age of 5, it's about feeling. So when you're trying to remember things that happened in your childhood, often you can't remember. You can get a vague sense of things that happened before 5, but you can't really remember them in a linear way. And also, memory is distorted over time, so your memory will be faulty. If you speak to other people, your mother, your father, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, people who are older who remember things from your childhood in a different way, their memory will also be faulty. So you will never have 100% of the pertinent information for your healing journey. And you just have to accept that. There's no getting away with it. But it doesn't matter, because often you can get enough of the information to make sense of your childhood, and you can piece things together that were probably true. And if it works for you, that's all that really matters. So the first thing that you really need with the masculine path of healing is brutal honesty and some kind of focus. When you look back on your past, things were done to you and you'll have done things to other people. And you need to be brutally honest about these things, because sometimes you'll have behaved in a particularly bad manner. And this is true for pretty much everybody. And you also need some type of focus. So brutal honesty with self and some kind of focus. A very common form of the masculine path of healing is counseling and psychotherapy. You go and talk to a trained person about things that happened in your life and try to reach some kind of resolution. I first went into counselling when I was, I think, 43 or 44 years old, and I found it extremely useful. But before that, I'd thought that I was the kind of person who probably wouldn't get anything out of counselling. But then various things happened in my life and I thought, I need to talk to someone about this. I went into counselling. I found it extremely useful. So some kind of talk therapy is one form of the masculine path of healing. Another form of the masculine path of healing is writing things down. Now, I've used something called the self-authoring suite, and this was created by Jordan Peterson and a group of psychologists Some of you may like Jordan Peterson, some of you may not, but I have to say the self-authoring suite, I found it extremely useful, very well thought out, and it was very useful for me. And speaking with another person and writing things down need thinking before you do the writing or the speaking. But thinking by itself is of limited use. When you verbalize it to another person, it takes on a life of its own. And when you write it down, it also takes on a life of its own. So I would say that although thinking is a necessary first step, if that's all you're doing, your healing journey is going to be extremely limited. And there's two final points I'd like to make about this. And one is, stay with the issue as long as is necessary, but once you've reached a certain level of understanding, let it go. So it might be something that was done to you in your childhood, by another family member, by someone outside the family. Once you've reached a certain level of understanding, you don't want to keep dwelling on these things. Let them go. Now, often you might find 6 months, a year, 2 years later, something new about that thing will bubble up. Well, if that happens, deal with it when it bubbles up. Once you've reached a certain level of understanding again, let it go. The final point I'd like to make is that be careful what you share and be careful who you share it with. So things that come up and realizations that you've made about yourself and about your life, some things are best kept private, in your heart, in your brain, but some things it's better to share them. You have to make a value judgment on whether to keep things to yourself or whether to share them. But be careful who you share them with, because some people have got blabber mouths and they'll just go and tell everyone. And other people, you might be friends with them now, but you might fall out with them. They might use it against you. So be careful what you share and who you share it with. And finally, I'd like to give an overview of the feminine path of healing. And again, I'll make a video just about this later on. So the feminine path of healing is about unconditional love. There's lots of different ways we can do this. So the first thing I would say is show affection for others. Now, people who are suffering from clinical trauma often find it difficult to relate to other humans. If that's the case, they often find it easy to show affection to an animal, cat, dogs, and horses being the most common. Now, if you're in that category, then go slow, show your affection, get a pet dog. Later on, when you've opened up somewhat, you can start sharing your affection with other people. Assuming that you don't have that level of trauma in your life, show affection to the people around you, your brother and sister, your children, your parents, whoever it is. Tell them, I love you. It's an easy thing to say. My daughter and I, we often tell each other that we love each other, but I've met people who've said things like, my father never said he loved me. And I have to say, I think in many respects, that is a tragedy. Now, you don't need to be saying it every minute of every day, but share your affection now and again in the appropriate circumstances. The second thing is take care of yourself. So examine your bad habits, try to eliminate them or reduce them. Look at your good habits, try to work on them. It's not rocket science. So one strategy that you can use for this is you can say, how will X give me more or less agency? So for example, if we take smoking, so maybe you're a smoker, you smoke 20 cigarettes a day, you've identified it as something which you think is not making your life better. So you could then write a list of, let's say, at least 25 points. How does smoking give me less agency? So I feel bad when I wake up in the morning. 2, I have less money. 3, my clothes smell. 4, blah, 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 blah. Write a list. Also, write the positive spin from that list. How will being a non-smoker give me more agency? 1, I'll feel better when I wake up. 2, I'll find it easier to go to the gym. 3, I'll have more money. 4, I'll feel better. 5, my clothes won't stink of smoke. And you can easily write a list of 25 things using that technique. Or just take up some positive habits. Go jogging, start a meditation routine, go to the gym, whatever it is. Identify some positive action that you can take. Set reasonable goals. Don't set them too high, don't set them too low. You can always have a gold, silver, bronze system. Bronze, you go to the gym twice a week. Silver, you go to the gym 3 times a week. Gold, you go to the gym 5 times a week. Something like that. You can make a system that works for yourself. And finally, you can do a loving kindness meditation. Now, in the Buddhist tradition, this is known as metta. M-E-T-T-A. Not to be confused with the metaverse, which is a single T. But metta, this is from the Pali language, which is the language of Buddhism. It's normally translated as loving kindness. Now, I already have a video about loving kindness meditation on my YouTube channel, so feel free to go and have a look at that. Although I will make one at some point, I will make another one at some point in the future. I hope you found that useful. And finally, I'd just like to plug my book and my course. So this is my book, Post-Capitalism, An Alternative to the Great Reset. It's about an alternative to capitalism, communism, whatever system you think that we have, corporatism. And it's about alternative models of how we can run the world. Secondly, I also have a course. There's details of this on my website. If you're interested, I talk about in much more detail about healing modalities and using creative visualization meditations and journaling to be systematic in your approach to your own healing journey. Thank you for giving me your time today. Peace.